Starting in 2014, summer is the time for fun, but our main character Taeseo was still grinding away at his exams in the study room until 5:00 a.m. and then rushed to pick up his brother Huiseo. Huiseo had an injury on his leg, so moving around was really difficult. Someone told Huiseo to do it himself, but because he loved his brother, Taeseo still carried Huiseo on his back from the car to the pier. After the boat came the bus. The two brothers traveled back to the countryside together to live with their grandparents for peace of mind. The two of them enjoyed watching the convertible so much that they almost missed the bus to Taeseo's new school for enrollment. Taeseo brought his records to meet the teacher. The teacher wondered why someone who studied so well in Seoul would come back to this school that was about to close and suspected he got kicked out for fighting. Teacher, he is actually a top student. Looking at that face that screams intelligence and kindness, how could you ask if he was in a fight? Because Taeseo felt bad for his brother being bullied in Seoul, he decided to move back to his hometown for a peaceful life. The teacher just muttered a few half-hearted comforting words, and then reminded Taeseo that he had to work hard because if people wanted to get into a university in Seoul, they would have gone there to study, not stayed here. Even though Taeseo thought this guy was weird, he just said yes to get it over with. There were no students, but they still had to make uniforms for show, so there were many extras. The teacher told Taeseo to just go grab some. They were in front of the library. Taeseo placed his transcript neatly on the desk and went to get the uniforms. Taeseo arrived at the library and saw the female lead, Eun Ah, turning her head, looking as beautiful as an angel. He was dazed for just a moment, but he stayed sharp. Taeseo carried the box of uniforms and went back to meet the teacher. The teacher was holding the transcript, and when he saw Taeseo walk in, he stuttered with wide eyes and asked if he bought those grades because they were so high. The teacher said with this transcript, Taeseo could confidently apply to medical school. Taeseo chuckled and asked to leave. He walked to the middle of the schoolyard and for some reason stopped, looked up at the sky, held his ears, and swayed, feeling dizzy. All of this was seen by Eun Ah from above. Just as she was about to rush down to play the beauty saving the hero, Taeseo snapped out of it. Taeseo took the bus home and saw his grandfather waiting for him at the stop. Taeseo was very happy, thinking his grandfather might buy him a gift like when he was little on the way home from school. But the years change people. His grandfather only informed him that his desk hadn't arrived yet and told him not to let his grandmother know, or else she'd nag. But grandma already knew, so grandpa still got scolded. Haha. Taeseo was cleaning his things and saw a memento from his father, which made his heart ache as he remembered the day his father was in the hospital. Whatever, let's put it away and go play to feel less sad. Today there was a new student, so Eun Ah went to school very early, but the new student Taeseo was even earlier. Since he arrived early, the school had no power, leaving the guy standing there pulling the fan cord but getting no air. Here was the chance for Eun Ah to play the beauty saving the hero. She told him to follow her. She talked about how stingy the school was because there were no students in the summer, so the school cut the power and she had complained but they didn't care. Only the library in the school had a breeze. He turned on the fan, she opened the window, asked a few questions, and then they each did their own studying. Eun Ah's mouth said to just ignore her, but every now and then she'd ask about this or that. When she got tired of asking, she started talking about her own ambitions. Taeseo was kind, so he listened seriously to whatever she said. After talking for a long time, she remembered to give him the Wi-Fi password and introduced her name. In his head, Taeseo probably thought this girl was really interesting. Taeseo sat there studying but couldn't focus because Eun Ah was doing all sorts of things next to him. Eun Ah kicked off her sandals and mumbled over a pile of vocabulary words. Both of them studied until lunchtime and then went to eat noodles together. For some reason, the cafeteria brought out uniforms. Eun Ah took out 2 sets and gave them to Taeseo, telling him to take one home for Huiseo. Who knows if she was getting a commission from the school, but she wouldn't stop advertising the quality of the uniform, even lifting her skirt to show Taeseo how real the product was since she was wearing one too. Taeseo was scared when he saw her grab her skirt, covering his eyes and shouting. He wasn't in the mindset to appreciate the quality of the product anymore. After she put her skirt down, they both sat at the table and talked about random things. Eun Ah was like a talking machine, and from those rambling words, Taeseo learned that the gifts his grandmother gave the two brothers before were all based on this girl's suggestions. It was time for school to end, but Eun Ah was still talking like a machine, making Taeseo rethink whether he should come to school tomorrow. Seeing that Eun Ah wasn't going to the bus stop with him, Taeseo asked why she wasn't going. It turned out she had a bike, while he had to walk home. On the way home, happy images of when his parents were still alive appeared again, making Taeseo stand there dazed. The sound of Eun Ah's bike bell woke Taeseo up, and he continued home. Today, Taeseo's new desk had arrived, so Grandma was sitting there checking the quality. Although Taeseo said the desk was fine, Grandma kept nagging, forcing him to change the subject to ask about Huiseo's leg. Huiseo happily said he was making good progress. In fact, if he took the cast off now, he could fly a few laps. Yesterday he acted like he wouldn't come, but today Taeseo still arrived very early. But Eun Ah, who had the key, hadn't arrived yet, so he had to stand outside and wait. Taeseo asked Eun Ah to share the key with him, but Eun Ah wouldn't have it since holding the key felt so cool, and it was rare for someone to wait for her, so she just let Taeseo wait. While studying, for some reason, Eun Ah gave Taeseo a pink scarf, and Taeseo wore it around his neck like a bib. After that, they both focused on studying again. It was time for school to end, and because he wanted to go with Eun Ah, today Taeseo rode a bike while she took the bus. Yoon Ah sat on the bus and saw Taeseo provocatively cycling past. She wouldn't lose, so she shouted at the driver to go faster. But the bus had stops. Once she got off at her stop, she just started running. Yoon Ah saw Taeseo was about to catch up to her, so she sped up to reach the finish line. It wasn't in vain since the beauty won. The next day, Yoon Ah also brought a bike so they could ride home together after school. Yoon Ah must have done it on purpose because one second she made plans to ride together, and the next second her tire went flat. It was okay. Taeseo just gave Yoon Ah a ride home. Yoon Ah and Taeseo spent a beautiful exam prep season together, eating cake, drinking tea, and studying. As for the studying, who knows if any words actually entered his head, but Taeseo's mind was full of Yoon Ah. When Yoon Ah got home, she saw her father and So-hun with some Western guests. Everyone was sitting and eating together, chatting and laughing. Nobody noticed she was back. Yoon Ah felt a bit sad and went into the house to change, then went down to the kitchen to find food and met her father. Yoon Ah sat and ate, taking the chance to talk with her father. Yoon Ah told him about her friend Taeseo, who was always trying, and how his hardworking look made her heart flutter. Seeing that her father seemed a bit jealous, she quickly gave him a compliment, saying he was pretty good too. Her father was so happy he had a little wine, but Yoon Ah kept telling him to drink less, so he had to put his glass down. While his brother Seo had been asleep for who knows how long, Taeseo was still sitting there studying. It must have been so hot he was delirious because the brother kept calling for mom, mom, making Taeseo give him a little breeze so he would sleep peacefully again. When night turned to day, Yoon Ah's father was sitting chill, watching the rain and waiting for his daughter to come out and drink with him. But as soon as she got there and saw the rain, Yoon Ah immediately hopped on her bike, even losing a sandal in her hurry to bring the key to Taeseo so he could study. Studying is clearly very important. So despite the heavy rain and wind, after giving the key to Taeseo, Yoon Ah promised to go home, change into something pretty, and come to class. She just cycled there to give the key to the handsome guy. But when she got home, Yoon Ah didn't see her father on the porch anymore, which made her run around looking for him. It turned out her father had gone inside to brush his teeth. Yoon Ah breathed a sigh of relief when she saw her father. Taeseo arrived at class, prepared 2 cartons of milk, and studied for a long time before seeing Yoon Ah walk in with wet hair. Yoon Ah said she really liked looking at Taeseo, so he moved from sitting next to her to sitting across from her so she could look all she wanted. But for some reason, Yoon Ah wasn't looking. She was staring at her phone instead, making Taeseo remind her twice. Who knows what the phone said, but even though she just got to class, Yoon Ah wanted to leave, so Taeseo had to study alone. He was used to having a beauty study with him, so now that Yoon Ah wasn't there, he sighed and decided to go home too. On the way back, he was planning to return the key to Yoon Ah, but he ran into his grandmother and was dragged home immediately, so he didn't have time to give her the key. The next day at school, he probably missed Yoon Ah so much that he hallucinated her running up the stairs. Taeseo shook his head to wake up, but it turned out Yoon Ah actually arrived. She stood behind him and pulled many name tags out of his backpack. Yoon Ah said this was how girls confess their love, but Taeseo didn't care because the only thing he cared about was Yoon Ah. Yoon Ah kept asking Taeseo about these girls, but all she got was Taeseo's answer that he didn't know them. Taeseo asked Yoon Ah why she left early yesterday to change the subject. At first, he just wanted an excuse, but hearing Yoon Ah's story made him like her even more. Yoon Ah's father suffered from severe depression and had once thought about logging out, so she was very worried about him. Yesterday she went home and it seemed her father was better, so today she went to school with Taeseo. This made Taeseo very happy, and they shared their future plans. Yoon Ah said she used to want to do all kinds of jobs, but now she wanted to be a painter. As for Taeseo, because he had to take care of his family, he just wanted to grow up quickly and make money to support everyone. Yoon Ah was charmed by Taeseo's old soul vibe, so she just stared at him and listened to his future plans, which didn't include her. After talking, they packed their books to go home. Since she had talked so much, Yoon Ah just said outright that she liked Taeseo very, very much. Taeseo didn't say anything. He just quietly walked ahead, while Yoon Ah followed behind. The two of them didn't speak to each other, just cycled to the intersection and then went their separate ways home. After summer break ended, everyone started heading back to school. So today, Taeseo went to school, and it was fun with so many students. The teacher said Taeseo was doing great, so he should just self-study, and then led him to the library. Taeseo stepped into the library to study alone, looked at the next desk, and felt a bit of longing for Yoon Ah. Meanwhile, Yoon Ah stood by the window and thought of Taeseo. After finishing his study, Taeseo immediately ran to pick up Seo from physical therapy at the hospital. On the bus, Seo wouldn't stop rambling about all sorts of things to their grandfather and brother, but Taeseo was deep in thought, so he didn't really respond. In a flash, the day arrived to go to Seoul for the university entrance exams. Taeseo was reading a book when a mother and child ran past and bumped into him, making him drop his book. When he leaned down to pick it up, he accidentally saw Yoon Ah following him. In Seoul, Yoon Ah suggested she wanted to follow Taeseo, but he said he was very busy, so she had to give up and messaged So-hun to stay over for a night. Yoon Ah happily skipped to the address So-hun sent, but surprisingly, a man was also following her into So-hun's house. Yoon Ah was completely shocked and thought So-hun was cheating on her father. So-hun had to explain to Yoon Ah that she liked Yoon Ah's father, but he didn't like her back, so this couldn't be considered cheating. Yoon Ah didn't care and kept her opinion that So-hun was terrible and left. Taeseo didn't want Eun Ah to follow him because it turned out he was going to get his ears checked and then meet his best friend. After the checkup, he was told his ears showed no signs of damage, so the bouts of tinnitus and dizziness might be due to psychological issues right after his parents died in an accident. After a busy day, by evening Taeseo took the chance to call Eun Ah, but as soon as she picked up, Eun Ah talked non-stop into the phone about her frustrations and pent-up feelings. She had bravely said she liked him and followed him here, only to be abandoned by him. And now she was lost. Taeseo heard she was lost and rushed to the train station to find Eun Ah. Arriving there, he saw her standing looking out the door for him. Rushing to her side, it turned out she was just admiring the Han River. The young couple watched the river together and then got on the train to go home. On the train, Eun Ah couldn't stop talking about how upset she was. She had gathered all her courage to confess her feelings, but Taeseo didn't answer. He even ghosted her for the entire summer. This made Taeseo really shy, so he reached out and covered her mouth with his hand. The young couple got bashful as he silenced her. Eun Ah said Taeseo was the catalyst that made her a better person. Taeseo admitted it, and then Eun Ah decided to stay by his side forever. He was very happy but acted shy, so he gently took Eun Ah's hand and they decided to be together. Teacher Moo drove the main leads right to their front doors. Before they got out, Teacher Moo very thoughtfully told Eun Ah to prepare carefully for tomorrow. He reminded her to double-check her exam supplies and told her to eat and sleep on time. The teacher was so enthusiastic, but Eun Ah only focused on the guy sitting next to her. They promised to meet early the next morning. As soon as Eun Ah got out of the car, she sent a text, making Taeseo quickly hide it so the teacher wouldn't find out. Once Eun Ah was home, it was Taeseo's turn. Teacher Moo saw the hero's grandparents and brother standing out on the road to welcome him, so he felt quite shy. Teacher Moo was truly respected by the hero's family. Because of that, the teacher borrowed Taeseo's dad's watch because he needed it to check the time tomorrow. Early the next morning, as the hero was trudging to school, he saw Eun Ah already waiting for him. The girl was pretty and proactive, yet this guy only asked if she slept well. He is definitely inexperienced. However, watching this shy couple sit next to each other, that pure love makes us smile and imagine ourselves in their place, especially for the single viewers. Both of them got on the bus to school to take the annual exam. Right after the stressful exam ended, Eun Ah dragged Taeseo to the Han River to blow off some steam, but Taeseo only had 701 in his wallet. You have to laugh at this kid going out with a girl without even having $10 in his pocket. However, Eun Ah didn't mind at all. She pulled out her wallet to treat her boyfriend truly a dream girl. How about we take the train? It takes 5 hours, so we'll have more time together. This innocent guy actually came up with a great idea that impressed Eun Ah. After arriving in Seoul, they grabbed 2 bowls of hot noodles and headed straight to the Han River. Even though this was just an ordinary trip, being with the person you love made it special. The shimmering sight of the poetic Han River made them both shout with joy. As long as the scenery is beautiful, the heart naturally turns to poetry. In this moment, Eun Ah suddenly had many wishes of her own. She wanted her dad to get healthy so she could leave for college. When she asked Taeseo about his future wish, he just mumbled and wasn't very clear, maybe because the world he wished for was standing right in front of him. They were so wrapped up in each other that they lost track of time, making them run like crazy for fear of missing the train. High school love is always so pure that it makes anyone look back at their own past. It's during these peaceful moments that people start to feel insecure. If we can't go to the same school, things will be different, right? As they sat close together on the bus, Eun Ah suddenly asked this. Taeseo said that no matter where they are, unless they are in a different world, he will always answer her texts. Because she was so used to having him around, Eun Ah didn't dare think about being apart. And as always, Taeseo was the one to reassure Eun Ah with everything he could do. In an atmosphere thick with romance, a passionate kiss was a must. I want to be with you. Taeseo froze at Eun Ah's words. What's meant to be will happen. This girl pulled Taeseo back to her house in the middle of the night to satisfy her heart's desire. This couple was sneaking into the house for who knows what. Once they made it into Eun Ah's room, Taeseo showed his true colors. The hero pulled his little girlfriend into his arms and pressed a kiss on her lips. They were so into it that their clothes fell to the floor without them noticing. He managed to get into the girl's room, but he couldn't even undo a few buttons. In the middle of the climax, they were startled by Eun Ah's father's voice. Try your best to study, honey. I'm proud of you. Her father had no idea there was a big guy hiding under his daughter's bed. It was a total mood killer. The two had to sit and calm down for a while before they dared to continue. Wait, I have something embarrassing you need to know. Suddenly, Eun Ah stopped Taeseo. It turned out the thing she was embarrassed about was her colorful bra. Taeseo just chuckled and said it was fine because he was going to see it all anyway. And so, that night they studied together until late. Even though they spent the whole night together, they were still shy when they saw each other at school the next morning. It turned out they were called to the teacher's office. Taeseo still kept his rank at the top of the list. Eun Ah was unexpectedly praised by the teacher because she had made clear progress. Of course, it was thanks to Taeseo's teaching that Eun Ah improved. It wasn't in vain that the hero had to sneak to Eun Ah's house every night to teach her spelling all night long. That's why the female lead's room was always locked all day, to the point that Eun Ah's aunt had to leave rice in front of the door for her to eat. How could she know Eun Ah was already in the room eating her own sausage? It's not clear if the university exam was close or not, but Taeseo was in Eun Ah's room every night. She even secretly hid a bottle of wine in her shirt right in front of her brother to bring into the room. It turned out that night was Christmas, so the two of them had some wine and ran outside to play in the snow. I thought they were just having a sip to warm up before getting down to business. Time flew by, and the day of the final university results finally arrived. Taeseo getting into his first choice was easy to understand given his ability. Taeseo's results weren't out yet because they were in the second or third round of admissions. As for Eun Ah, the teacher kept encouraging her like that. Taeseo's grandmother was also very curious to see how her granddaughter-in-law did. Perhaps this university situation was what forced the couple apart. Taeseo's school was all the way in Seoul, while the school Eun Ah chose was very far from there. Moreover, Taeseo was about to start school while Eun Ah still had to wait nearly a month for her results. Truly, what they both feared happened. Their blossoming love was now tested by geographic distance. Because she missed Taeseo so much, Eun Ah took it upon herself to book a train ticket to take him to the city for school. How could I let you go back alone? Taeseo was frustrated because he was worried about his girlfriend having to take the train all by herself for his sake. But for Eun Ah, just 1 hour sitting with him on the train was enough. Eun Ah, I can't do this. I can't let you do this. Taeseo felt bad for his girlfriend who always had to take a long train ride just to see him. He really wanted to stop this, but Eun Ah absolutely refused. Because to her, even if Taeseo were abroad, she would still go see him. While the two were sharing a tight hug before saying goodbye, Eun Ah suddenly read a text and jumped up for joy. Oh my god, I passed! It turned out to be the good news of Eun Ah passing university, making them both jump with joy. Even though it was a bit far, it was better than Eun Ah failing and having to stay home. Taeseo's college life went on without any more worries. He had a place to live, a tutoring job from his uncle, and most importantly, his girlfriend nearby. Taeseo entered his brand new dorm room, took out a memento from his parents, looked at it for a while, and then put it away. His roommate had family there to help him move in, which made Taeseo even sadder since he was all alone. Taeseo brought a bouquet of white flowers to visit his parents' grave. He told them that he had passed university as they wanted, and that he would make money to take care of Seo and his grandparents, so his parents should be proud of him. He bowed with shaking shoulders, remembering his parents. Today was also Eun Ah's first day of school. She was sitting in the lecture hall when a girl named Na came over to introduce herself. Coincidentally, their student IDs were close to each other, so they quickly became friends after just a few words. The two of them went to class together and shared cute stickers. Taeseo also studied very hard. He had to try his best because he had so many responsibilities on his shoulders. Today, Eun Ah and Na skipped class to go to the beach and loved it. So that evening she quickly called Taeseo to tell him about her trip. In a flash, a month passed. Eun Ah was still going to school, but her friend Na was nowhere to be seen. Missing her friend made her think of her boyfriend, so Eun Ah took out her phone, snapped a photo, and sent it to Taeseo to talk about how much she missed him. She was in the middle of texting when the teacher walked in, but she was bored with studying, so Eun Ah grabbed her bag and went to Seoul to see Taeseo. But when she arrived, Taeseo hadn't finished class yet, so she wandered around waiting for him. She went from the bus station to the Han River, but he still wasn't done, so she texted him and got the answer that he would be very late. Eun Ah sadly took the bus back to see her father. When she got home, both her father and Sohun came out to meet her. But because of the previous misunderstanding, Eun Ah was still mad, so her attitude wasn't very happy. While she was bored, Taeseo sent her a photo of himself with flowers. As soon as she saw her boyfriend's photo, Eun Ah was full of life again. The long-distance couple just went on like that, calling every day and occasionally meeting up for a hug. After the hug, they stood in the middle of the street, stroking each other's hair and laughing as the music played, just like a Korean movie. They kissed a few more times and jumped around happily. Song Chan, holding a cigarette, invited Eun Ah to come work at his hotel. Eun Ah refused because she still had to go to school. Song Chan said what kind of studying involves skipping class all the time to go play. This surprised Eun Ah because she had skipped for a whole week and only Song Chan knew. Song Chan tempted Eun Ah to work and even urged her to move out and live on her own. He tempted her to quit school and do something else to see if she liked it. Eun Ah was too tired to talk to him anymore and went home to eat with her father. As soon as she got home, she saw everyone sitting and eating together and received the news that her father and Sohun were getting married, which made Eun Ah very angry and she left. Sohun hurried after her and explained that she had ended things with the previous man, and Eun Ah's father knew that. Sohun tried to explain about imperfect love to someone who currently has a perfect love, which was a bad move. Eun Ah thought Sohun was just blaming the imperfections of love to cover up her cheating. Sohun felt insulted by Eun Ah and kept warning her. Eun Ah ignored her and left. When she got outside, she met Song Chan carrying a bouquet of flowers. Song Chan already knew everything that happened, so he held her back and wanted her to take the flowers inside to give to the guest because she had just shown some wrong emotions. No way would Eun Ah agree, but Song Chan just said she was grown up now, so she should leave her father alone and take care of her own life. Who knows if Eun Ah realized anything, but she accepted the flowers and went inside to give them to Sohun as an apology. This made the tense atmosphere from earlier soften. Feeling upset all day, Eun Ah wanted to tell her boyfriend that night, but her dear Taeseo was in class with a professor. He was a great man, so even though he was in class, he realized his girlfriend was having a problem and quickly slipped away to check on her. With just one text, she poured out her sad feelings. This made Taeseo so worried that he rushed to Eun Ah's place immediately. Her hands texted "I'm fine," but in her head, Eun Ah always wished Taeseo was by her side. When she heard Taeseo was only one station away from meeting her, she ran fast to the station to pick him up to close the distance. The female lead, Eun Ah, started stepping into the challenging job market. She just got a job at a fancy hotel, so she was still a bit overwhelmed. The fast-paced work environment here made it hard for Eun Ah to adapt at first. However, this seemed like a bright new beginning for our female lead as she walked down the sunlit hallway. From now on, I'll work part-time and then decide whether to take a gap year or not. Eun Ah sighed to Song-chan about her future plans. Seong-chan didn't stop her and just told her to go for the internship, because if she did, she'd get a spot in the dorms. No matter what the female lead chose, Taeseo was always right there to cheer her on with all his heart. You're good at English, you like talking to people, and you draw well, so you'll definitely find a good job. Taeseo even remembered the little detail that Eun Ah liked drawing veggies, which totally surprised her. Because of their busy work schedules, the two of them now had to rearrange their date times. Even though they had less time together, it only made the lovebirds cherish those moments even more. There is nothing more beautiful than a love story where both people work hard for each other. Even after a long, tiring day at work where she just wanted to lay in bed, the moment she remembered her boyfriend was waiting for her, all of Eun Ah's worries magically melted away. Taeseo, as usual, walked down the street to his girlfriend's house. This secret romance was so familiar, and they were so good at it that the second he opened the door, he'd slip right inside without anyone noticing. But today, Seong-chan accidentally caught the two of them sneaking into Eun Ah's room, so he played dirty and snitched to So-hun. When bringing food to Eun Ah, So-hun was startled by the giggling coming from her future stepdaughter's room. Even though she was officially just the dad's girlfriend, So-hun felt she still had the right to know about Eun Ah's life. We've been dating since senior year. We just hid it because we were afraid you guys would worry. Taeseo sat cross-legged and honestly confessed everything to So-hun, not daring to hide anything else. Yeah, keep hiding it, my lips are sealed too. So, are you guys using birth control? So-hun seemed very chill about this. But the sudden question made the male lead jump out of his skin, quickly clarifying that they hadn't done anything yet. Come on, hiding under the girl's bed all the time and claiming we haven't done anything. Who would believe that? Maybe this over-the-top care made Eun Ah a bit annoyed with the woman about to become her stepmom. The date the couple had saved up and waited a whole long week for was ruined just like that, so she was a little sad. Taeseo noticed his girlfriend was deep in thought, so he just sat quietly next to her, waiting for her to calm down. Anyway, Taeseo's presence was the biggest comfort Eun Ah had at this moment. You said looking at me makes you feel better, so keep looking. Taeseo gently put his hand on Eun Ah's hair and rubbed it. Just looking at each other like that, the guy slowly closed his eyes and moved his lips closer to hers. Maybe their love story was so beautiful that it accidentally became an invisible burden without either of them even realizing it. Taeseo was super outstanding in his field, so he got an invite to join his upperclassman's research lab. Unluckily, the work schedule fell right during summer break, making the male lead hesitate a bit. Say yes because getting in there is really hard. According to the older guy, this was a huge stepping stone for the future anyway, so Taeseo had to nod and agree. Because he wanted to see his girlfriend every week, the male lead had to move his whole Saturday schedule to another day. But the tough part was, Eun Ah didn't have total control over her work schedule. Seong-chan used his connections to set her up with a part-time job serving an important VIP guest. The moment she met this guest, Eun Ah immediately nodded and agreed to the schedule the lady set up. However, when she realized the part-time shift fell right on Saturday morning the day Taeseo had booked in advance, Eun Ah frantically chased after her to push the schedule back, but the lady was already long gone. As for Taeseo, he was busy with his tutoring job until it was pitch black outside. It was exam season, so the parents asked him to tutor extra on Saturdays, which gave the male lead an even bigger headache. He tried hard to juggle things to change his morning schedule, yet it wasn't until late at night that Eun Ah called to tell him she was stuck at work. Part-time work piled up, and he had no time to review for his classes, putting Taeseo at risk of losing his scholarship this semester. The doctor said his grandma needed surgery to ease her leg pain, but she insisted on keeping her savings, just in case he lost his scholarship so they would have something to fall back on. On top of that, his little brother Hui called to deliver bad news right at that moment. Everything piled up like the straw that broke the camel's back, making a guy who always looked cheerful like Taeseo get red, teary eyes from pure exhaustion. So as not to disappoint his grandma and brother, he grinded day and night to study for finals, to the point where he was always nodding off while tutoring. Luckily, he had a super understanding girlfriend. Even without getting a single text from her boyfriend all day, Eun Ah still waited patiently, trying to bury herself in work to miss him less. The second exams were over, Taeseo finally breathed a real sigh of relief. Because he missed her so much, he caught a ride straight to the hotel where Eun Ah worked just to see her for a bit. Being on shift, the female lead had to beg her manager just to get a 30-minute break outside. Unexpectedly, after weeks of waiting for this short 30 minutes together, they hadn't even been face-to-face for a minute before the older guy Seong-chan showed up and crashed the party. The hotel's rules were super strict. Eun Ah absolutely wasn't allowed to go out for personal stuff during work hours. Seeing that, Taeseo didn't mind acting like a hotel guest so his girlfriend wouldn't get in trouble. And then he quietly left. The meetup was already short and now got cut off, making both of them just sigh in frustration. Eun Ah couldn't hold it back anymore. Ignoring Seong-chan's warnings, she dashed after Taeseo's fading silhouette. Even though they stood right in front of each other, it felt like they were separated by a whole horizon, unable to step up and give each other a comforting hug or kiss. They had to step back and use rushed text messages on their phones to encourage each other. It was just a tiny thing, but it gave the couple so much motivation to keep going on their tough journey of love. Even so, the adult world seemed to carry way too much pressure, leaving the young couple totally overwhelmed. After thinking it over for a while, Tae-seo finally decided to turn down the rare invite from his upperclassmen, even though stepping foot into that lab was his biggest dream and ambition. He had to look back at that dream room one last time with heavy eyes before closing the door to his future with his own hands. Maybe right now, making money to get by and protecting his love was his top priority. The female lead's situation wasn't much better. She was forced to make the hardest decision, saying goodbye to her dad and her familiar home to fully move into the hotel dorms. No longer getting to eat the breakfast her dad cooked himself, Eun Ah became super sluggish and down. She wondered why her high school wish to move out and live independently tasted so bitter right now. She could only leave a few words for Sohun, hoping she would take good care of her dad in her place. Ironically, Eun Ah's own efforts to grow up accidentally pushed their gorgeous love story to the edge of falling apart. Tae-seo accepted trading away a golden opportunity just because he thought they'd have lots of time together this summer break. But then Eun Ah moved into the dorms, and the physical distance between them just kept growing. "Let's stop forcing our schedules to match anymore." That blurted-out sentence signaled a heartbreaking truth. The couple wasn't just physically separated, but they were also slowly losing each other spiritually. The harder Eun Ah pushed herself to be independent, the more she accidentally pushed Tae-seo away. Their time was running out, especially when the male lead started thinking about enlisting in the military. Eun Ah refusing to meet up was the final spark that set off Tae-seo's emotional breakdown. The feelings bottled up for so long finally burst. No matter how tough you are, when your only emotional support crumbles, nobody can stay standing. Tae-seo just stood there bawling his eyes out in the middle of a street full of flowers, where not a single eye could see through his pain. The street that used to be a silk ribbon bringing the two kids together now turned into a cruel dead end for their romance. As for Eun Ah, no matter how tough she acted on the outside, she couldn't hide her guilt and regret. Just like Tae-seo, she stood frozen in the place that was once painted as a bright future and burst into tears. The young girl's tears fell like crashing waves. The scene was beautiful but carried a freezing, sorrowful vibe. In December of that year, pure white snow covered the whole sky. That was also when Tae-seo said goodbye to his grandma and little brother to head off to the military. The cold snowflakes seemed to carve the loneliness even deeper into the boy who had already given his whole heart to love. The moment he faced that brutal reality was also when he chose to let go, closing the book on an unfinished romance full of regrets. And so, 10 long years went by. Tae-seo has now become a subway train operator. Those bright youth memories from back in the day now just dropped into broken glass pieces, cutting painfully into his heart. If back in May 2021, our guy Tae-seo was still burying his face in overtime until late at night in the office, and happily bragging to his parents the next morning about his first job, then by September 2025, he had pivoted to become an operator at the train station. The train is in position, all doors are closed. The announcement sounded off, which was also the moment Tae-seo clocked out. This guy's trip home involved a lot of steps, to tell you the truth. Getting off work to eat with coworkers, running until it was pitch black, riding his bike, and then climbing a hill until he was out of breath just to get home. On top of that, he didn't even have time to catch his breath when he got there before having to entertain his best buddy. To smoothly kick this dude out, Tae-seo smartly turned on all sorts of loud machines in the house so his friend would find it annoying and leave on his own. After seeing his friend out, he started his routine of calling home to check on his family. Tae-seo asked Hui to go to the teacher's daughter's wedding for him, and then casually asked a few questions. Hui complained that it had been way too long since he came home. "Don't you miss our family?" He's still wet behind the ears, but who knows where this kid Hui learned to nag exactly like an old person. Tae-seo just laughed it off, said goodbye, and hung up. Popping the tab of a beer can and taking a few big gulps, he suddenly saw his phone notify him that his account was being logged into on another device. Frowning and wondering what jerk had the guts to hack his account, he suddenly froze when he realized that person was actually Eun Ah. Maybe this was her silent way of reminding him that her presence was still always right there. At the same time, in a dark room, Eun Ah was quietly plugging in her earphones, her eyes tearing up as she stared at the pictures taken with her dad. The next day, she left and went to take the manager job at a lodging facility. Eun Ah dragged her luggage and stepped into a gorgeously vintage building, where a super enthusiastic female staff member welcomed her. This older girl not only fully handed over the work duties but also showed her a place to rent. After getting all settled in, Eun Ah grabbed a bike to ride around and research the market. Just a few minutes of pedaling and she was right at a bakery, and going a bit further she found a coffee shop that was totally her vibe. After getting things done, Eun Ah happily ran off to meet her close older sister Seong-chan. The two sisters hugged each other as soon as they met and jumped up in joy. Once they got home, Eun Ah and her older sister opened a box full of mementos of her dad. Seeing her tearing up, the older sister quickly brushed it off. "That's enough sadness. Eat first and then you can be sad later," and then laid out a whole table full of meat, making Eun Ah chew eagerly while constantly praising how good it was. The older sister friend offered to let Eun Ah live together with her, but she turned it down because her house was too far away. Staying at work was still more convenient. While the two of them were chatting away, Song-chan's boyfriend suddenly showed up out of nowhere, totally wasted, so she dragged him into the room to deal with him. After waiting forever and not seeing them come out, Eun Ah had to quietly grab her bag and leave. At that same time, Tae-seo was sitting in the control cabin, announcing the train's arrival at the station. Just a thin pane of glass separated them. He was on the inside, and Eun Ah was on the outside. They passed right by each other within inches, completely unaware. Song Chan called, but Eun Ah didn't pick up. She just stood there dazed, watching the train speed past her eyes. Getting back to the homestay, Eun Ah tiptoed into the staff break room, the place she would be sticking with for the near future. She carefully placed her dad's photo on the table and softly talked to him about her upcoming plans. On the other side of the city, Taeseo was enjoying some quiet time in his small room, deeply focused on his favorite craft work while listening to soothing tunes. A sudden call rang out. He picked up, and in an unconscious moment, the image of Eun Ah rushed back and overwhelmed his mind. The first thing Eun Ah did to kick off her new day was go get pastries for the homestay guests. On the way back, she didn't forget to buy a fresh bouquet of flowers to congratulate herself on her first day of work, then rolled up her sleeves and dove into cleaning. Like everyone else, Eun Ah stepped onto the subway train driven by Taeseo. The previous times she was too busy wearing her earphones, so she had no idea, but today, as soon as she took them off, that familiar, warm, deep voice suddenly caught her ear. Her heart skipped a beat, and Eun Ah walked really fast toward the front of the train. Just like in the old days when all she had to do was walk over and Taeseo would always be there waiting for her. From the driver's cabin, Taeseo also accidentally caught sight of her through the camera screen. His eyes lost control, glued to that skinny figure. But right as Eun Ah almost touched the cabin door, destiny played a joke on them once again. It was time for the train to move, so the two of them had to accept missing each other. The second he got off work, Taeseo ran like crazy back to the old station, just hoping to catch a glimpse of Eun Ah. But by this time, she was already sitting at a different train stop. Eun Ah got a call from the room 6 brother letting her know that an acquaintance named Song Chan was on her way to her place. The funny thing is, Song Chan was like magic. Her name was just mentioned on the phone and she appeared right in front of her. Before they could even say a proper hello, Song Chan insisted on dragging Eun Ah back to their hometown. She annoyedly pulled away and refused. The two of them just kept pulling and tugging at each other in the middle of the street. And exactly like a TV drama script, Taeseo happened to walk right by, taking in that whole struggling scene, a perfectly misunderstood situation. Feeling bitter, he didn't step up to say a word but quietly turned on his heel and walked away. But when God has a plan, you can't run from it. After walking around for a bit, the two bumped into each other right in the middle of the stairs. Eun Ah and Taeseo froze, staring at each other in shock for a few minutes. Right after that, Eun Ah had to run for her life, because behind her, Song Chan was still tagging along and chasing her. Song Chan was truly very persistent. Eun Ah ran as fast as she could, thinking she shook Song Chan off. But who would have thought that a moment later she saw Song Chan standing there blocking her way home. Since she couldn't hide, she had to face it. Eun Ah stopped to talk things out clearly with Song Chan about her dad's homestay in the countryside. It turned out that the house built with passion was scammed and taken by bad people. Song Chan wanted to team up with Eun Ah to file a lawsuit and win it back, but it seemed the little girl was too exhausted from this legal battle, which was why she decided to run away and hide in Seoul. At the same time, Taeseo sat dazed in the company locker room, his mind constantly rewinding Eun Ah's rushed look today. As for Eun Ah, after saying goodbye to Song Chan, she also wandered aimlessly through the city streets. Remembering Taeseo's eyes from earlier, bitter tears started falling down one after another. Taeseo was sitting at work when he got a call from his teacher, calling to say thanks because his old student sent a very generous wedding gift envelope. Taking the chance to catch up, Taeseo asked about Eun Ah's whereabouts. The teacher replied that she didn't come back for the wedding, but there was a serious matter. The authorities had just sent a notice requesting the demolition of Eun Ah's house. Hearing the shocking news, Taeseo immediately caught a ride back to his hometown and went to meet the teacher's wife to get a clear picture of the situation. However, besides that cold piece of paper, he couldn't gather any more clues. While wandering on foot on the way back, Taeseo bumped into his little brother Seo, who was hanging out and riding motorbikes with his friends. So one guy proudly twisted the throttle while the other dragged his feet, and both brothers headed home together. Along the way, the kid continued his nagging song, blaming Taeseo for his decision to randomly quit his office job 3 years ago. Hit right in the feels, Taeseo quickly changed the subject to ask about Seo's post office job, only to get a super sarcastic reply. "I'm doing fine. I'm not impulsive and rebellious like you, bro." As soon as he got home, Taeseo rolled up his sleeves and dove into fixing broken machines and furniture. After finishing the work, he took his bike for a chill ride past the familiar grocery store, conveniently swinging by to take a peek at Eun Ah's old house. When he walked into the store, his eyes immediately caught the familiar landscape paintings that Eun Ah used to draw. He nervously pressed her, asking, "Did Eun Ah just stop by here?" But the store owner lady flat out denied it. Taking the hint, Taeseo didn't make things hard for her anymore. He calmly left his contact info, asking her to pass a message to Eun Ah that he really missed her. Touched by the steady true love Taeseo had for the poor little artist girl, the store owner softened up and spilled a little info. She brought out a stack of greeting cards that Eun Ah still sent back regularly every Christmas. On the back of every card, she carefully wrote down the addresses of the homestays where she used to work as a manager. Taeseo cherished and flipped through every card, completely absorbed in reading every familiar line of text. The corners of his mouth curled up into a relieved smile, knowing that the person he loved was still living well. Going back to his apartment in Seoul, Taeseo dove right back into his craft work. The guest dropping by the workshop this time was Ah Seoul. She brought an old photo to order a picture frame. Ah Seoul seemed to be a pretty nosy girl as she kept starting conversations, digging to find out what Taeseo's main job was. Seeing that the craftsman was so dedicated and detail-oriented, she generously sealed the deal to make a frame for a giant oil painting she had at home. The painting size was pretty huge, so Taeseo straight up asked her to go home and measure it herself to bring back. because he wouldn't agree to help measure it. After chatting for a bit, Ah Seoul got nosy again. "Were you a programmer before?" Taeseo calmly replied, "Yeah, that's in the past. Now I've switched to driving subway trains." Ah Seoul let out a surprised ah, planning to dig deeper into the reason for his career switch. Deep down he was secretly sighing in exhaustion, but Taeseo still answered politely just to brush it off. Waving goodbye to Ah Seoul, Taeseo took a chill walk around the neighborhood and conveniently went over to invite his best buddy out for a drink. The two of them ordered a tongue-burning plate of spicy stir-fried pork, polished off 2 bottles of soju, and talked about life. While sipping away, Taeseo got a call from a weird number. After listening, his face clearly dropped. His buddy pressed him asking what was wrong, but he just stayed quiet and shook his head. For the whole drinking session that day, only his buddy was seen talking non-stop, while Taeseo occasionally chimed in with a few, "Yeah, that's right," his hand constantly raising his glass to drown his sorrows. Leaning his head against the bus window on the way back, Taeseo couldn't stop thinking about what his buddy said earlier about a peaceful life. The movie reels of the past played in slow motion in his mind, taking him back to the day he was still a programmer. That day, he had just gotten a promotion notice from his boss to go train in India when Seo tearfully called to break the news that their grandpa was pulling weeds in the garden and suddenly passed out. Taeseo sighed. He bitterly realized he had drowned himself in work so much that he neglected his whole family. Without flinching, he marched straight into the director's office and handed in his resignation. That bold move left everyone in shock, but Taeseo knew exactly what he needed. He wanted to be free to live the life he chose, wanted to follow in the footsteps of a job connected to the memory of his late mother. So he left behind the office glory, choosing to stick with the driver's cabin at the hustling train station. For all those years, Eun Ah had always deeply missed Taeseo. She was curious about how he was doing lately, what his job was, and whether he felt lonely and sad by himself on his parents' death anniversary. But right now, after actually seeing him in the flesh, she decided to bottle up those random thoughts. However, the grocery store owner in their hometown was totally a matchmaker sent from above. Because right when she was about to give up, the lady secretly sent her Taeseo's phone number to reconnect their broken strings of fate. The next morning, Taeseo was dripping with sweat while jogging when he saw a missed call on his screen. His gut told him something, so he instantly called back, and on the other end of the line, Eun Ah's voice rang out. "Go home and then we'll talk," she said. The power of love is truly amazing. Just through a quick transition scene, Taeseo rushed straight home, washed up super clean, and grabbed his phone to call Eun Ah. Probably because they had been apart for so long, both of them were awkward, hesitating for a bit before they could spit out a few polite greetings. Eun Ah gently asked about Taeseo's current life, then quickly put on a strong front to prove she was still doing totally fine, and he didn't need to worry about her. Taeseo hesitated, wanting to dig into the current relationship between her and Song Chan, but noticing that Eun Ah was dodging the topic and didn't want to bring it up, he just let out a sigh, said goodbye, and hung up. The homestay where Eun Ah was working had a strict rule. Staff were absolutely not allowed to stay overnight. All this time, Eun Ah had been secretly squatting in the break room, but the director finally caught her. Being ordered to leave immediately, she had to drag her bulky pile of luggage over to crash at an older friend's house. Coincidentally, that friend and her boyfriend were about to go on a long trip, so they asked Eun Ah to stay over and help house sit and water the plants. One afternoon after getting off work, Taeseo just stepped into the train station when he suddenly saw Eun Ah leaning against the glass window, looking outside with dazed eyes. His chest stung, and he immediately turned around to hide because he was scared to face her. Eun Ah was startled and turned around. Even though she only caught a quick glimpse of a back speeding by, she instantly recognized it was Taeseo thanks to the familiar backpack he wore on his shoulder. Realizing he was dodging her on purpose, a wave of self-pity washed over her, so she also quietly turned her back so they wouldn't have to awkwardly bump into each other. Taeseo hurried his steps, leaving behind his lonely silhouette fading away from Eun Ah's sight. Once that figure completely disappeared, all her bottled-up feelings shattered. Eun Ah collapsed to the ground and sobbed. She went out of her way to take the train all the way here just to see him for a second. Yet Taeseo's rejecting attitude hurt her so much. After crying her eyes out, Eun Ah heavily stood up to get ready to head home. But she had no idea that Taeseo hadn't left yet. He was standing quietly in a corner waiting for her. The first sentence they directly said to each other after all those years apart was just a shattered sigh. "It's been a long time since I've seen you." Hearing that, Eun Ah's tears burst out once again like a broken dam. The two stood in silence looking at each other. It seemed like their eyes held millions of words they wanted to say, but just couldn't put into words. Taeseo's post-military life continued peacefully in his hometown. Once, by chance, while working with a carpenter to fix up Eun Ah's old house, he unconsciously opened the door and stepped inside, looking around the now empty house. Just like the picture, no matter where she is, she's doing well. The male lead looked at the photo of the female lead smiling brightly and smiled to himself for comfort. But even saying that, Taeseo couldn't keep lying to himself forever. The moment he saw Eun Ah cover her face and burst into tears in the subway station tore this scholar's heart apart. The two of them were separated by just a door, but it felt as far as the horizon. At that time, Taeseo could only stand frozen with red eyes, looking at the person he loved but unable to step toward her. He knew that if he stepped forward, both of them would have to endure endless pain. So Taeseo still tried to force himself to look calm in front of Eun Ah, even though it made both of them feel awkward. The male lead still walked the female lead right to her door, exactly like the times when they were still together. "I can't go upstairs, right? If your husband sees, it'll be a mess." Hearing the idiot Taeseo say she was married made Eun Ah's face go totally blank. I'm still single and collecting cobwebs here. What husband and kids at a time like this? This clueless question made Eun Ah feel even more annoyed when talking to Taeseo. So as soon as she reached the house where she was staying temporarily, she slammed the door shut, only managing to say a few words of goodbye. At this point, Taeseo also realized that his being there was making Eun Ah uncomfortable, so he planned to leave. But suddenly, from inside the house, the sound of Eun Ah fiercely arguing with her older friend Na Dong erupted. It turned out this crazy lady kept taking jabs at Eun Ah every time she saw her face, and even brought up her late father. Eun Ah couldn't take this ridiculous woman anymore, argued back and forth with her, and then grabbed her suitcase and left right away to cool her anger. As soon as she got out the door, the female lead was surprised because the male lead was still standing there waiting for her. He probably heard the whole argument just now. Without saying a word, Taeseo snatched Eun Ah's suitcase and pulled her away, looking angry. It turned out that because the female lead lied about having a stable place to stay in Seoul, she now had to drag her suitcase out onto the street. Taeseo wanted to drag Eun Ah to his place to crash for the night and figure things out later, but she absolutely refused to listen. As a friend, I can't let my friend be in a tough spot. For the first time, Eun Ah witnessed Taeseo's angry and determined attitude, so she had to give in. The female lead trailed behind Taeseo all the way to his door before hesitantly bringing up her situation. I used to have a boyfriend, but now we've broken up. Hearing this, Taeseo just gave a light nod, which made Eun Ah feel even more awkward. Clearly, the two of them had been apart for so long that even a normal conversation became awkward. More accurately, the two of them had once given each other their whole hearts, and now having to treat each other like strangers made everything even harder. Taeseo was still completely devoted to the girl he once loved to death. Yet Eun Ah didn't know how to respond to the care and attention of the person she had once hurt. After getting a sleeping spot ready for Eun Ah, Taeseo just stood outside doing his usual work. To break this awkward vibe, Taeseo picked up his phone and played his favorite songs to work to. I just logged into your account the other day to listen to music. Hearing that familiar melody, Eun Ah let out a bitter laugh. Over the past 10 years, she had only logged back into that shared account twice. Now, seeing that Taeseo hadn't changed at all over all those years, she felt even more like a terrible person. The dark night just stayed silent, with only the boy from the past still working hard to ease the sadness in his heart. Perhaps those 10 years were like a wall separating them, so no matter how hard they tried to open up, things could never go back to the way they were. The next morning, Eun Ah woke up startled. She looked around but didn't see Taeseo anywhere. Maybe she thought he would come lie next to her. But no, for that whole night, Taeseo just stayed outside to make sure she had a peaceful sleep. The female lead was about to leave when suddenly Taeseo called her back. It turned out he had even prepared a full breakfast before she left. Perhaps because of this, Eun Ah opened up a little more to him. Have you ever thought about me? In this atmosphere, the female lead was suddenly curious about the male lead. But the answer she got was just a very quick no, as if he didn't stumble at all when saying it. Even though on the outside he said he didn't miss her, Taeseo couldn't lie to his own heart forever. When he took her to the train station, that feeling of missing her became stronger than ever. So when the two met again, Taeseo suddenly asked about Eun Ah's relationship with her ex-boyfriend. The male lead was trying to find out more about the girl who used to be so familiar but was now so distant right in front of him. Eun Ah didn't really want to talk about it, partly because she felt guilty facing Taeseo, but over all these years, the male lead had always been like this. Always a person completely devoted to Eun Ah, so no matter how much she tried to dodge, he still wanted to close that distance. Taeseo used the excuse that he would sleep at his workplace to give Eun Ah the only bed in the house while she had no place to stay. Taeseo said he was doing this as an old friend so Eun Ah wouldn't feel awkward. Before leaving, the male lead also prepared all sorts of supplies for Eun Ah, from food and water to even spare clothes. Taeseo's gentleness always made Eun Ah feel safe. She unconsciously walked around the house where Taeseo lived and smiled with delight. Perhaps Eun Ah couldn't forget that this tiny house used to be the small dream of the two of them when they moved to the big city. It was just a pity that now both of them had their own space but couldn't be together like in those old days. After entrusting the house to Eun Ah more accurately, after leaving her in the place where he felt most at ease, Taeseo could finally feel at peace to go back to the countryside with his grandparents and brother for this brief period of time. Getting to return to the loving home of his grandparents and brother, Taeseo felt healed after a period of struggling out in society with so many worries. His younger brother Seo was also at the age of dating and had his eye on a junior girl, constantly daydreaming about having a home of his own. Like, having 2 kids? Having 4 kids? Life according to that dream was just so beautiful. The more Taeseo listened, the more he saw his younger brother looking exactly like himself when he also used to dream of a beautiful life with Eun Ah. Maybe it was just a short time of a few days, but after so much time apart, the two finally met again. Both their hearts seemed to beat to the same rhythm whenever they thought of each other. While working, Taeseo accidentally saw an old moment from a little girl customer. It was exactly like that moment in the past when he also saw Eun Ah in that same way. Those beautiful memories chose the right moment to flood back into Taeseo's slowly cooling memory, making him unexpectedly shed the tears he had held back for so long. The image of the two of them walking hand in hand, exchanging those youthful smiles, made the male lead sink deeper, as if he wanted to live in it one more time. Eun Ah was the same. After being healed by Taeseo's gentleness and peaceful life, she also made her own decision to call Song-chan directly to give the answer she had figured out. She decided to reject Song-chan's feelings and stay in Seoul to take the first steps of a new beginning for herself. Since Song-chan didn't want this, he wanted the two of them to meet up to clear things up. When they met, Eun Ah also showed a bit of reluctance. Even though Song-chan noticed that, he felt like she had become a completely different person. That determination and firmness of Eun Ah officially closed the unstarted love story between the two of them. Even though he didn't want to, Song-chan still tried to force himself to be strong to face her. He raised his hand to shake hers as a goodbye because he knew this might be the last time they met. Just like that, Eun Ah finally threw away a piece of her past burden to move forward. When she returned to Taeseo's cozy house, she suddenly saw him sleeping deeply on the bed after hours of tiring work. Seeing that familiar sight, she unconsciously walked close to the bed and stared at him without even realizing it. Taeseo didn't know if he was holding on to his happiness in his dreams. But in reality, he was. He was still sleeping, but his hand was tightly holding onto Eun Ah's hands without her noticing. At first, she tried to use her hand to escape Taeseo's grip, but he suddenly held on even tighter. This time, the female lead didn't reject that pull anymore. She just lay down on the bed right into his arms. I knew you would come back. It turned out Taeseo hadn't been sleeping at all. He hugged her even tighter into his arms. Taeseo woke up from his daze, walking around the house when he saw Eun Ah walk in naturally from outside. Taeseo just stared at her, not knowing if he was awake or dreaming, forcing Eun Ah to speak up. Stop looking at me like that, it's embarrassing. Only then did he snap out of it and go to the bathroom to wash his face. This guy has it so good waking up with wide eyes to find his ex-girlfriend buying grapes for him to eat, and even hand-feeding him and asking if they taste good. Maybe the grapes weren't good because after eating just one, Taeseo sent Eun Ah on her way. Even so, when walking her to the car, our boy Taeseo was still very attached, still trying to hold her hand and exchange passionate looks. A little bit of love made his words on the train sweeter, earning him so many compliments he felt shy. Shy as he was, Taeseo still loved it. He bowed to say thanks, and then quickly slipped away to hang out with Eun Ah. Eun Ah and Taeseo went to a famous photo spot looking out at Namsan Tower. Eun Ah excitedly took out her film camera and snapped away, capturing her favorite moments. Seeing Eun Ah point the camera his way, Taeseo instantly struck a cool pose for her to take pictures, and then they kept walking together. Getting home, Taeseo washed his hair but didn't blow-dry it. He immediately grabbed his phone to read messages from Eun Ah, listening to the housekeeper talk about the homestay's laundry situation. The old laundry place closed down for a long vacation, so for now, they had to do the laundry themselves until they found a new laundry service. It was almost lunchtime, so Eun Ah whipped up a plate of salad with a loaf of bread before bringing the blankets to study. In a flash, it was time to get off work. The lovebirds Taeseo and Eun Ah made plans to hang out again. Soon, Eun Ah had a moving schedule, so she invited Taeseo to have a housewarming dinner with her and her roommate. I think eating was secondary, carrying stuff was the main event. Seeing our boy Taeseo get to carry stuff, and being so excited that he put a reminder in his phone makes me see how young and green he is. This couple dates so weirdly. Out of all the things to do, they invite each other to go running. Eun Ah must have been so tired from running that she just randomly pointed to one side and said she wanted to stop and watch the sunset, not because she was lazy or anything. But it was so embarrassing when Taeseo said she pointed to the wrong side because the sunset was in the opposite direction. After getting bored of playing on the bridge, the couple planned to go eat, and this time Taeseo's best buddy Hung Sung was there too. Eun Ah was thrilled to see Hung Sung, greeting him like they had known each other for a long time, then introduced herself as Taeseo's ex-girlfriend. She thought Taeseo must have talked about her to Hung Sung a lot because, after all, she was his unforgettable love. But unexpectedly, Hung Sung shook his head and said he didn't know. He only knew about some pure older girls and other younger girls. To stop his friend from talking too much, too long, and saying stupid things, Taeseo quickly told everyone to raise their glasses for a toast. After eating, Eun Ah drank a bit too much, so she asked Taeseo to go see Namsan Tower at night. Girls really do care about the past relationships of the person they like, and Eun Ah is a girl too. Going back and forth, she still wanted to know how long Taeseo dated that older girl and how it happened. Taeseo confessed everything. He knew her for a year but only dated her for a month. But when Taeseo asked if Eun Ah had any other relationships, Eun Ah just gave a shallow answer. A guy she knew for 3 months, and then she changed the subject. The two sat and talked about their unofficial breakup from the past. Eun Ah said it took her 6 months to accept the fact that they were no longer lovers. As for Taeseo, he was completely shocked by this. He always thought he would have a small family with her. The final question was still Taeseo asking if Eun Ah wanted to get back together with him. Eun Ah barely had time to say thank you before his best buddy Hung Sung burst in, making the young couple super embarrassed. But Eun Ah and Taeseo holding hands on the way home was already the answer to whether they got back together or not, hehe. While working, Eun Ah got a message saying Song-chan was cleaning out her house. She sighed and texted back a long list, asking Song-chan to donate the stuff to charity. Down in the countryside, Song-chan worked hard to help Eun Ah clean up, while up in Seoul, Eun Ah was happily dating Taeseo. Taeseo was at work when someone came looking for him to discuss business. While they were discussing, Eun Ah sent a message saying she couldn't go on a date with him tonight. It turned out she had to meet the director, listen to him complain about all sorts of things, and the conclusion was the homestay would close for the next 2 weeks. After hearing that, it was already late at night. Eun Ah dragged her tired body up every stair to get home. To her surprise, she caught her boyfriend standing at the door waiting for her, making Eun Ah so happy her eyes teared up as she hugged him from behind. Eun Ah was fixing a light at the homestay when she got a text from Taeseo saying he was standing outside. People in love are so weird. The two of them just kept waving at each other like that until nightfall, and then went to buy ice cream. Eun Ah and Taeseo went shopping together and then worked together. They cared for each other gently and simply, just like love back in our grandparents' time. Eun Ah wanted to help Taeseo work, so he looked at her for a moment and then asked her to pin a stack of photos on the board. After Eun Ah finished, she took a leftover piece of wood and sat there playing with it. Eun Ah asked Taeseo about his future plans. Taeseo said that while Seo was still willing to take care of their grandparents, he would do things for himself, and then he would go back to live with his family too. Eun Ah asked him when he was going back, which made Taeseo think for a moment, but his answer was, "I don't know yet." Eun Ah asked if Taeseo planned to get married. Taeseo said yes, but what about Eun Ah? Eun Ah's answer of, "I don't dare" to sent Taeseo into deep thought. Meanwhile, Eun Ah quickly changed the subject, saying that thanks to Taeseo, her life in Seoul was much better now. The two of them promised to stay together without any official title. Taeseo's birthday was coming up, so they talked about how they celebrated each other's birthdays every year. Who knows how this couple talks, but they drove the conversation into a dead end, so Eun Ah took out the piece of wood she just drew on to cure the awkwardness. Taeseo held out his hand and asked Eun Ah where his birthday present was, and this girl was so cheeky. Eun Ah sat there, gave Taeseo a kiss, and said, "I am the present." While the young couple was being all sweet, Seo called to complain about their grandfather's business. Bad timing, so Taeseo quickly said goodbye and then went back to demanding a present from Eun Ah. Down in the countryside, Seo was worried about his brother, so he followed the wooden cart up to Seoul to visit him. Eun Ah was preparing to welcome a new guest named Amy Park to the homestay, and surprisingly, it was So-hun, her dad's ex-girlfriend. This auntie still tried to act like she loved Eun Ah, but Eun Ah really didn't like it. When Seo arrived at his brother's office, he looked around and then sat down to wait for his brother to return. Seoul brought her painting to ask Taeseo to frame it, and the person who opened the door was Seo, which startled her. While both grandsons were in Seoul, their grandmother in the countryside fainted. Luckily, a female mail carrier found her. She immediately took her to the hospital and called to inform Seo. Hearing the news, Seo lost all his strength and fell to the floor. He had to rely on Seoul to help him up and take him to the hospital. Getting off work, Taeseo saw several missed calls from Seoul, and when he called back and heard the news about his grandmother's stroke, he instantly comforted Seo and arranged everything to go back to their hometown. Eun Ah was about to get off work when Aunt So-hun demanded she stay with her, otherwise she would complain to the director. Even though she was annoyed, Eun Ah still had to go eat with this auntie. While eating, So-hun advised Eun Ah to return to their hometown, take back her dad's homestay and run it. This made Eun Ah extremely annoyed. She scolded this auntie, telling her that instead of worrying about her, she should go back and fulfill her filial duties to her own mother. Eun Ah realized her attitude was wrong, so she softened a bit, but when her dad was brought up, both women fell into sadness. So-hun offered words of encouragement and wanted Eun Ah to step out of the sadness together, but Eun Ah didn't even want to hear the whole thing. She stood up and left. When Eun Ah got home, she received a message from Taeseo saying he had to go back to their hometown because his grandmother had a fall. This made Eun Ah think about So-hun's suggestion to return to their hometown, so she ran to her room to find her. But when she got to the door, Eun Ah hid and didn't want to meet her. Taeseo's grandmother's surgery went extremely well. Taeseo and his grandfather looked at each other, nodded, and then split the tasks. Taeseo went to take care of Seo, who had a leg injury and was in the hospital, and then called to thank Seoul. Hearing that Seoul hadn't gone back up to Seoul yet, Taeseo planned to go find her, but he caught his grandfather sitting dazed in the hospital hallway. The grandfather and grandson sat and talked for a while. Then Taeseo said goodbye to his grandfather and went to the beach to meet Seoul. Eun Ah was sitting dazed when she got a message from Taeseo saying he was safe, making her breathe a sigh of relief. She was about to call her boyfriend when Taeseo got a call from his best buddy Hung Sung. This guy was drunk and wouldn't stop complaining about how he was flirting with a girl but got rejected, making him embarrassed to death. After talking non-stop for a while, Hung Sung hung up the phone by himself and kept drinking. To thank Seoul, Taeseo drove her back to Seoul. Seoul asked Taeseo how he knew where her house was, and Taeseo said he guessed. Seoul was surprised and asked Taeseo if he was a fortune teller or how he guessed so well. She wanted to ask him to look into a few other things for her, but Taeseo told Seoul to just go to sleep while he drove all night. While drifting off to sleep on the sofa, Eun Ah got a call from her senior, Song Chan. She didn't know what his deal was, calling every time it was night. Taeseo drove back to Seoul and turned to ask Seoul for directions home, only to see the girl nodding off and asleep for who knows how long. Eun Ah went to the door of her room but heard Song Chan's voice, which made her run away once again. Eun Ah was wandering the streets when she caught Taeseo stepping out of the car with another girl. This left her completely stunned, but she also guessed that Taeseo was on his way to the homestay to see her. Taeseo had just arrived at the front gate of the homestay when he got a message from Eun Ah saying don't come. And right as he looked up, he ran into Song Chan. I don't know how God designed things, but a series of misunderstandings is about to happen. Eun Ah had no idea that the moment she chose brought sadness to both Taeseo and Song Chan, and now, the male lead froze when he saw with his own eyes that Song Chan was hanging around near where she lived. He was still the same, still not daring to stand up and fight for his love, only knowing how to quietly walk away. But luckily, the male lead still knew to pick up the phone and call his girl, and Eun Ah was just sitting right nearby. He's gone. Taeseo had to gently remind her because he saw a slight panic in Eun Ah as she pulled his hand like she wanted to run away. It turned out that because both of them didn't say a word about each other's lives, no wonder it caused an unnecessary misunderstanding. The female lead also thought the girl at the male lead's company was his new girlfriend because the two were really close. Hearing that his ex-girlfriend misunderstood he had a girlfriend and got jealous, and that she had never even met Song-chan either, made Taeseo unconsciously let out a silly laugh because they almost had to be apart again because of this guy Song-chan. But this encounter with Song-chan wasn't as simple as the previous times. Taeseo clearly saw the jealous expressions on his cold face whenever he saw him, causing him to fall into deep thought. Taeseo carried that lingering worry in his heart back to his life that was almost turned upside down. His little brother was in a wheelchair dragging himself meter by meter, and his grandmother still hadn't woken up after the surgery, making everything fall onto him and his grandfather. He also wanted to share some of the cooking chores with his grandfather so he could have more time to rest. Eun Ah at this time unexpectedly received a text to meet up from Song-chan, so she quickly rushed to the meeting spot with him. Taeseo had no idea about his girlfriend's quick meetup. Meanwhile, he casually went to grab a meal with the younger girl Seoul. It was obvious that even this idiot realized this innocent girl liked him. However, the male lead picked up his phone to call Eun Ah, and then told the girl that this was his girlfriend, making Seoul's bright face instantly drop. She seemed to really like Taeseo. She gave him a signal by handing him her name tag. Yet Taeseo was so blunt about it, making the girl freeze up when she found out he already had a girlfriend. Little did he know that his girlfriend was still entangled with her ex-boyfriend. Eun Ah only met Song-chan because of the compensation contract for her stepmom, so Hun intentionally renting out the house that belonged to her and her dad to guests. The female lead was still the same, still very harsh to her stepmom, who always tried to get close to her, and she always believed her dad's death was caused by her. Song-chan also took that chance to step up and help the female lead get back the house that belonged to her. At first, they even had a heated argument because Eun Ah was still very stubborn. She would rather lose all the compensation money than give in to So-hun, forcing Song-chan to try his best to stop her. Eun Ah had to get in the car and follow him back to her house just to take a quick look around and check every detail in the house before leaving. Luckily, Song-chan's sweet, manipulative words had no effect on her this time, so she just quietly walked away. The male lead right now was on pins and needles. On one side, his girlfriend suddenly disappeared all day, and he had no idea where she went. On the other side, his little brother was also waiting every second for their grandmother to wake up, so Taeseo could only promise his brother that he would go visit their grandmother tomorrow. It seemed like the worries just kept clinging to him all the way back to his small apartment. He thought this was just another tiring workday, only wishing to quickly get home and lie down on his bed to ease that sadness. But this time was different. Eun Ah unexpectedly opened the door with a bright smile on her lips, making him freeze. "You're dead tired from work, but you have your girlfriend waiting here." Eun Ah's cute joke made Taeseo both moved and so happy that he almost burst into tears right there. What could be better than having a beautiful girlfriend always waiting for him at home, making all of Taeseo's worries just vanish. The small room seemed filled with happiness as the two of them joyfully shared every piece of cake and the little things together. "I thought So-hun was doing me dirty, but they sent the contract so I had to go back and check." Eun Ah also explained to Taeseo the reason why she disappeared all day today. Moreover, she also clarified her relationship with that guy Song-chan so he would worry less. "If you ask for my opinion about your future, then can I consider myself a part of it?" In the middle of their conversation, Taeseo unexpectedly said this. A sentence that seemed to further confirm the future relationship between him and Eun Ah. Unlike the high school boy from before, Taeseo now seemed more mature. He had also set his own goals. Seeing that maturity, Eun Ah unconsciously smiled and couldn't help but exclaim that it was great because now she could be a part of his life. The two of them just knew to work hard for each other and fully cherish these peaceful moments as much as possible. Early the next morning during work, Eun Ah unexpectedly got a message from Song-chan. It turned out the renters suddenly changed their schedule, messing everything up again. But this time, the female lead ignored his help because she wanted to solve her own problems by herself. "I'm just gonna do what I need to do, ask him for a little help, and then go back so Taeseo won't worry." In the end, she made her own decision to catch a ride back to that house without telling Taeseo. So when Song-chan saw Eun Ah busy cleaning the house, it made him think she had changed her mind. However, the female lead was still very firm when she asked Song-chan to take all his stuff left in this house they used to share and bring it back. Consider these meetups between them not as fixing their relationship, but as ending it under the title of friends. The two of them just said goodbye to each other at the end of the road. But Eun Ah unexpectedly returned to that house without saying a word, and it wasn't until Song-chan came back that he realized she was still hanging around here alone. Looking at the shared items, like each cup that marked his unfinished love with Eun Ah, made him feel incredibly bitter. After a long day at the place she once considered her home, now Eun Ah just wanted to see her boyfriend really fast to ease the loneliness she was carrying. Taeseo just finished his shift when he unexpectedly saw Eun Ah waiting for him, which completely surprised him. Nothing beats getting picked up by your lover after work, making the male lead keep looking at Eun Ah with eyes full of happiness. However, it felt like Eun Ah came to him just to ease her loneliness right after breaking up with Song-chan. Maybe a small girl like Eun Ah couldn't possibly stand in the middle of life's storms without a man's protection. Early the next morning, the female lead unexpectedly got more bad news from her older sister. Once again, the older sister came running and wanted Eun Ah to find a new place to stay. And on top of that, the company she was working for was about to close down. Eun Ah hadn't been settled for long before she had to pack her suitcase again to find a place to sleep and a place to make money. Just thinking about it made her face completely gloomy. Hearing the news that Song Chan wanted to completely clean out the shared house they used to live in made Eun Ah's heart sting. In the end, she still decided to pack her suitcase and go back there to keep whatever little memories she had left. Taeseo right now was heading back to take care of his grandparents and his limping little brother. This time he told his grandfather his decision to go drive a ship. The male lead's grandfather somewhat understood that Taeseo was still lingering around here only because of his grandmother and Huiseo. Just let Huiseo handle everything. He's a kid who's very good at taking care of others. His grandfather also didn't want Taeseo's grandmother and little brother to be a burden on him, so he said that. Taeseo also somewhat understood his grandfather's point, but right when he was about to achieve what he wanted, he seemed to freeze up. Just like Eun Ah, their hometown was the last place both of them would choose to return to and settle down. Both of them had their own dreams, so they left this place to go find that happiness. In a random moment, the male lead opened Eun Ah's profile picture to look at it and suddenly noticed the name Bayon Guesthouse. Curious, Taeseo tried searching the name online, and what hit his eyes was the image of Eun Ah smiling brightly next to Song Chan, leaving him completely stunned. Brushing that aside, Taeseo accidentally saw that the lights were on in Eun Ah's old house, so he was very curious and went over to check it out. It turned out to be Aunt So-hun, though it was unclear why she set up a camping tent right at this abandoned house. So-hun instantly recognized Taeseo, so the two of them chatted for a bit. Aunt So-hun probably had no idea that Taeseo and Eun Ah had gotten back together, so she unconsciously blurted out a few things about her. So-hun even gave Taeseo the address of the house where Eun Ah used to live. Watching the stepmom that Eun Ah hated so much blabbering about her daughter made the male lead feel a bit annoyed, and he was about to leave. But somehow, he turned back to confront So-hun about the incident from years ago. Only now did the truth finally come to light. It turned out So-hun didn't go to Hawaii for a vacation right when Eun Ah's dad got sick. Rather, Hawaii was actually So-hun's home, so she went back there to visit her family after so many years away from her hometown. Who would have thought that at that exact moment, Eun Ah's dad would choose to end his own life? Even up until now, So-hun still couldn't get over this. She had taken Eun Ah's dad to get checked for depression 100 times, but there were no signs. Yet, right when she felt at ease and left, her husband chose to leave this life, making her deeply regretful and blaming herself. After a few casual stories, Taeseo finally realized everything. It turned out that the ex-boyfriend and the business partner Eun Ah had been telling him about were the exact same person. The person that even he never expected was Song Chanhae was the ex-boyfriend she had lived with during those 10 years. Even though he felt like he was being deceived, Taeseo still chose to forgive Eun Ah. Just cut him off. He picked up his phone to call Eun Ah, hoping she would choose to walk away from that place. The place where she and that guy Song Chan used to live together seemed like the place she wanted, but it only brought her full of pain. He just finished his sentence right when Eun Ah dragged her suitcase there, making things even more awkward. In December 2015, Eun Ah just finished her internship at a luxury hotel. Eun Ah held a toy train in her hand, looking totally dumbfounded, and asked the receptionist's sister, "Sister, does breaking up over the phone count as a breakup?" The receptionist's sister pouted and said, "You guess." Yikes, what kind of jerk breaks up without even meeting face to face? Hearing the receptionist's judgment, Eun Ah quickly grabbed her suitcase and ran to find Taeseo right away. She couldn't be a jerk, so she had to meet him to say they were breaking up. With her determination to be a good person, Eun Ah dragged her giant suitcase through the heavy snow. Touched by her perseverance, God made a tow truck appear. And luckily, since they were going the same way, the driver gave her a ride. As soon as she got in the car, her phone rang, and Taeseo's grandmother's voice came from the other end. Today was the day Taeseo enlisted, and looking at this situation, he would probably have to leave for the army, without anyone there to send him off. Hearing this, Eun Ah cried throughout the whole ride. The tow truck arrived at Taeseo's grandmother's place, and helped his grandparents into the truck. Eun Ah got out of the truck and scraped the snow with her bare hands a few times before collapsing helplessly next to the car, crying and wishing a miracle would happen again. But it wasn't that easy. The young couple had been separated by fate from then until now. Eun Ah was still dragging that suitcase down the street when she got a call from Taeseo telling her not to leave, and that he was already standing in front of her door. But Eun Ah was already out hanging out, so she apologized and promised to meet Taeseo another time. Taeseo went home sadly, went back to work, and then the next morning he put on his backpack and got ready to head back to his hometown. Looking at the item Eun Ah left on the table, he paused for a bit but then kept talking to his grandfather on the phone. Taeseo drove his family's pickup truck back to his hometown, while Eun Ah rushed into his house looking for Taeseo. He looked for her, she looked for him, but the two of them just kept missing each other like that. Eun Ah sat sadly in the room waiting for Taeseo's phone to ring. As soon as the phone rang, she picked up immediately. It was Taeseo letting her know he was currently at the hospital while Eun Ah was in Seoul. Taeseo brought up his request wanting Eun Ah to cut off Song Chan, but she didn't answer. Eun Ah said they should meet and she would explain it in person. In that case, Taeseo would go up to Seoul to meet her and hear her explanation. But it seemed Eun Ah was the one who didn't want to meet because she only had a few minutes left before leaving Seoul. Taeseo asked one last time when they could meet, and got the answer in 3 days, making him super disappointed, so he hung up right away. Taeseo was standing there depressed by the wall when his grandfather came over, and the two of them talked. Meanwhile, Eun Ah was all alone and lonely in Taeseo's room in Seoul. While talking to his grandfather, Taeseo seemed to remember something, so he called Eun Ah to ask her to close the window for him. Eun Ah said she knew, acting all smart saying she already closed it, and then got startled. How did he know she was at his house? Taeseo and Eun Ah just kept getting played by fate, missing their chances to meet. But they both tried really hard to be together, and Taeseo was touched because Eun Ah felt the same way he did. Taeseo kept pushing about what happened earlier, but Eun Ah firmly wanted to meet and handle it in person. Eun Ah offered to clean Taeseo's house, but Taeseo said he didn't want her to exhaust herself. While he was at it, he also mentioned that he didn't want to exhaust himself either, so could they just stop making things hard for each other? Taeseo looked into the hospital room and saw his grandfather sitting by his grandmother's bed, with a lot of thoughts running through his head. Eun Ah went back to her family's homestay in her hometown. She walked into the kitchen and realized the place was way too old because everything she touched was broken. She had no idea how Song-chan was managing it. Eun Ah immediately texted Song-chan, demanding he fix it back to how it was. Song-chan obviously had to take responsibility, but before he could text back, a customer called him, so he had to leave. Eun Ah kept pacing in and out waiting for Song-chan to come fix her house, and conveniently bumped into an older friend, so she said a quick hello. She got tired of standing and waiting, so she sat down to wait, but then got a text from a guy friend saying he would come fix it instead of Song-chan. So whenever it was convenient, just text him and he'd rush over. On his end, Song-chan kept pacing back and forth, staring at his phone, debating whether he should text Eun Ah or not. Then he sighed, figuring it was just good that she was willing to come back at all. Taeseo really wanted to see Eun Ah, so he drove his truck over to her old house, but who knows if the young couple would actually meet this time. Taeseo stood there looking around, and from what I can tell he definitely walked into the right house. But Eun Ah was actually out riding her bike on the street, not at home. Since she wasn't there, he called her, and upon getting a text that Taeseo came to see her, Eun Ah immediately pedaled her bike back to meet him. Eun Ah pulled Taeseo out to the flower garden and promised to give him an answer. While the two of them looked at the flowers, Eun Ah explained that she had to come back here to protect her dad's property, which was the homestay. That was why she rushed back to her hometown, and as for things in Seoul, she had already sorted them out. Hearing that Eun Ah decided to live here, Taeseo asked, "So, are we going to do long distance?" Eun Ah said she would try her best to make time to see him more. Taeseo just had to agree. What else could he do? And the two of them continued walking through the flower garden together. Taeseo talked about his train driving job, while Eun Ah said she would stay here because she still loved this place. Taeseo saw the sparkle in his girlfriend's eyes, so he just had to support her. They walked until it got dark, and just as they were about to head back, Eun Ah seemed to remember something and ran back into the flower garden. A moment later, Eun Ah came out with a bouquet of daisies to give to Taeseo, thanking him for understanding and being so supportive of her. Ah Sol was sitting in her office slaving away for corporate when she got a thank you text from Seo. After frowning all day earlier, thanks to this text, Ah Sol finally relaxed a bit. After getting off work, Taeseo remembered the image of Eun Ah standing under the bridge waiting for him. Right now, his longing for his girlfriend was at its peak, and Taeseo had to work out just to stop himself from running to her side because he still had to go to work tomorrow. Meanwhile, Eun Ah was sitting at the dining table laughing and chatting with her coworkers, but she still missed her boyfriend a little bit. The next morning, Taeseo was doing his woodworking when he got a call from his grandfather. He said the doctor just met with him to talk about his grandmother's condition, but because he was hard of hearing, he couldn't catch what was said. Hearing just that, Taeseo immediately drove back to his hometown to meet with the doctor. Currently, his grandmother's vitals weren't doing too well, so she couldn't wake up yet. Taeseo got upset hearing that and asked the doctor a ton of questions until Seo had to tell him to calm down. Taeseo watched Seo sitting by the hospital bed, trying to talk to their grandmother to wake her up, then turned around to see their grandfather standing by the window looking completely deep in thought. He knew his shoulders were about to carry a lot more burdens again. The grandfather and the two grandsons went home and started cooking dinner. His grandfather said that in the past he always relied on his grandmother to cook, so he never worried about it. But now he realized cooking was truly an art, and advised Taeseo to go learn how to cook. Taeseo smiled, agreed, and then went back to washing the rice. Taeseo went looking for Seo but couldn't find him in the house, so he rode his bike out to search and found his little brother trying to catch fish in the river. Taeseo quickly ran down to drag his little brother back up, but Seo completely refused, thinking his older brother was trying to steal his fish. Taeseo told him they should just go to the market and buy some, because looking at the pitch-black sky, it was obvious there was no hope. Seo agreed to get out of the water. Afterward, the two brothers sat down and had a heart-to-heart. Ever since their grandmother became bedridden, it made Seo feel even more devastated about his disabled leg, to the point where he didn't want to think about the future because it seemed so bleak. After listening to his younger brother open up, Taeseo could only sit on his bike and wipe away his tears. Over on her end, Eun Ah was sitting around a bonfire with her co-workers, sharing old stories, when Song-chan showed up to join the group. This girl Eun Ah was super popular, because right after Taeseo, Song-chan also drove all the way there demanding to see her. Just as Song-chan brought the beer can to his mouth, Eun Ah asked if he wasn't planning on driving back, since he was drinking. Song-chan told her to let him stay here for the night, because he would be heading to Jeju for work afterward. The two chatted for a while, and then Song-chan gave Eun Ah back the bottle of wine that her dad had given him in the past. Eun Ah looked at the wine bottle and thought of her dad, making her face turn flushed. Song-chan took the chance while the beauty was in her feelings to invite Eun Ah to drink with him. As the alcohol hit, the words flowed, and they both thanked each other for all the support over the past years. Song Chan admitted he did all that because he liked her, but the word senior drew a clear boundary between him and Eun Ah. This was a farewell drink, so they wished each other well, and then Song Chan warned Eun Ah to stay away from bad guys who drive trucks, along with a bunch of other advice. Once Taeseo was done crying, he drove over to see Eun Ah. He wandered around for a bit and spotted a party table set for two. Taeseo definitely misunderstood something, because his eyes got red and teary again, and he walked back to sit in his truck. Taeseo picked up his phone to call Eun Ah. This girl was so drunk that Song Chan had to carry her into her room and tuck her in. She was fast asleep when her phone buzzed and woke her up, but she didn't answer it. Sitting in his truck, Taeseo saw Song Chan walking out of the house, which made him even more certain of what he was thinking. Meanwhile, Song Chan saw Taeseo in his truck, so he banged on the window and demanded Taeseo get out to face him. Hearing the noise outside, Eun Ah ran out, and when she saw the showdown between the two men, her tears started falling again. Taeseo was sitting in the truck and about to step out when he got a head shake from his girlfriend. This left him extremely disappointed, so he immediately drove off. The second the truck drove away, Eun Ah completely collapsed, sitting on the ground and crying. Seeing Taeseo, Song Chan felt extremely disappointed in Eun Ah, so he also got in his car and left. Both cars drove away, carrying two separate heartbreaks. The next morning, Eun Ah immediately hopped on a bus to go see Taeseo. On the bus, Eun Ah got a text from Taeseo saying he would come pick her up, but when she stepped off at the station, he was nowhere to be seen. Taeseo, at this exact moment, was rushing to the hospital because he got news that his grandmother wasn't responding to her medication and was in critical condition. Looking at his grandmother lying on the hospital bed attached to all those tubes, the image of his mother passing away years ago flashed back again, making his left ear throb in pain. Taeseo dragged his feet back home and met his grandfather, who was also anxiously waiting outside the door. His grandfather asked about his grandmother's condition, and seeing Taeseo's stuttering reaction, he seemed to realize what was happening and burst into tears. Taeseo sat in his room, unable to stop thinking, his eyes glistening in the dark. Taeseo went out to the riverbank, stepped down into the water, and stood there reflecting on everything that had happened. Eun Ah was still standing there waiting for him. She called Taeseo, but nobody picked up. Eun Ah kept typing out texts to explain herself and then deleting them, too scared to send them because what if he didn't believe her? Heartbroken, Eun Ah sat crying by the bridge. After soaking in the water, Taeseo walked into the kitchen and sat there, thinking about his grandmother who was still in a coma. Taeseo checked his phone and saw the missed calls from Eun Ah. He dialed her number. Seeing Taeseo calling her, Eun Ah immediately picked up and insisted on explaining herself. But before Eun Ah could finish, Taeseo told her that he was just too exhausted. Right now, it was completely beyond his breaking point, so he just wanted to forget everything that just happened. Eun Ah thanked and apologized to Taeseo. Perhaps another unofficial breakup was just spoken between the two of them. He received a frantic call from his younger brother. Their grandmother's mouth had moved at a sign she was finally waking up. Taeseo had been struggling with his recent breakup with Eun Ah, so seeing him in such a fragile state, a son stepped up and offered to drive him to the hospital. When they arrived, Taeseo found himself frozen at the door, watching the doctors crowd around his grandmother's bed. He was terrified that this sudden spark of life was just a rally, that final burst of energy people sometimes get right before they pass away. However, a son noticed the grandmother's fingers twitching and felt a surge of hope. Soon, the doctor confirmed the miracle. Her vitals were stable, and she would be fully awake soon. Overjoyed, Taeseo's grandfather and brother immediately started calling the neighbors to share the wonderful news. On the drive back, Taeseo tried to keep his composure, but halfway home, he pulled the car over, stepped out, and completely broke down. He sobbed with relief, finally letting go of the months of suffocating anxiety and guilt he had been carrying. His grandmother was going to be okay. Meanwhile, back in the village, Eun Ah heard the news from the local elders. She was truly happy for Taeseo's family. She hoped that with this miracle, Taeseo's life would finally get back on track, and that he would no longer have to suffer because of her. A few days later, while delivering the finished photo frame to a son, Taeseo revealed that he was changing jobs and moving away. Realizing this might be their last meeting, a son asked for a proper goodbye to close the chapter on her unrequited love for him. She suggested they meet one last time, at a place of her choosing, to hold hands and simply say thank you to one another. Touched by her sincerity, Taeseo agreed. Despite trying to move on, his heart remained tethered to Eun Ah. Memories of their time together continued to haunt him. During this time, Eun Ah threw herself into running her homestay, but the quiet life couldn't hide her deep loneliness. Unexpectedly, Mrs. Back visited her, hoping to heal their fractured relationship. In that moment, Eun Ah realized her resentment toward Mrs. Back was really just a way of avoiding the painful truth of her father's death. She saw that Mrs. Back loved and missed him just as much as she did. The two finally reconciled, letting go of years of bitterness. When Mrs. Back mentioned she was moving back to Hawaii and invited Eun Ah to come along, Eun Ah, feeling lost and adrift, decided to close the homestay and start a new life abroad. To be closer to his family, Taeseo interviewed for a new position near home. As he was preparing to leave his old job, a colleague gave him a photo they had snapped of him and Eun Ah at a subway station long ago. Looking at the photo, the memories came rushing back. He realized that while his family was his home, Eun Ah was his destination. Neither of them had done anything wrong, yet they kept missing each other. Refusing to accept this ending, he jumped in his car and raced to find her. But when he arrived, the homestay was locked. Eun Ah was already gone. Back in Seoul, a son met with Taeseo. to have the official goodbye she had asked for. Keeping his word, Tae-se took her hand and sincerely thanked her for always being by his side. Holding on tight, a sun finally bared her soul, confessing the feelings she had kept hidden for years. Tae-se looked at her and realized they were both the same. Two people unable to let go of a love that didn't belong to them. Caught in a whirlwind of guilt and confusion, he agreed to Sun's desperate request. They would try dating just until Christmas, as a way to help him move on from Eun Ah. A few days later, while visiting his grandfather in the village, Tae-se was feeling low after a failed job interview. While walking the quiet back streets to clear his head, he froze. There, sitting by the roadside, was Eun Ah. She had returned to the village one last time to say a proper goodbye. But before she could speak, a son and Tae-se's brother called out to him for dinner. Not wanting to disrupt his new life, Eun Ah hopped on her bike and pedaled away into the night. Throughout dinner, a son could see that Tae-se was miles away. She knew his heart was still searching for Eun Ah. Sensing his pain, she did something brave. She told him to go after her. Tae-se ran to their old school and found Eun Ah there just as he hoped. They spent the evening riding bicycles side by side, just like they did when they were teenagers. But when they reached the fork in the road, the weight of the future felt too heavy. Neither had the courage to ask the other to stay. With heavy hearts, they turned their bikes in opposite directions and rode away. That night, Tae-se couldn't stop himself from calling her. He confessed that he had traveled all the way to her old town just to find her. Hearing this, Eun Ah broke down in tears, mourning the fact that they always seemed to be ships passing in the night just as they were 10 years ago. But the conversation was cut short when a son unexpectedly showed up at Tae-se's door. The next day, Eun Ah went to Seoul to finish some errands. Before leaving for good, her feet led her instinctively to Tae-se's house, desperate for one last glimpse of him. But her heart shattered when she saw a son pull up in a car and familiarly punch in the door code to enter his home. To Eun Ah, it was the final blow. She realized she no longer had a place in his life and walked away, telling herself it was truly over. Later that evening, Tae-se rushed back to the village to find Eun Ah. They finally met at her family's abandoned old house, a place filled with their happiest memories. As they stood among the shadows of the past, they both broke down. They clearly still loved each other, but the uncertainty of the future felt like an impassable wall. In that moment, saying goodbye felt like the only kind thing left to do. Meanwhile, back at Tae-se's house, a son accidentally discovered a hidden drawer. Inside was a photo of Tae-se and Eun Ah, surrounded by countless mementos of their time together. She tried to stay strong, but the tears wouldn't stop. Looking at those photos, she finally accepted the truth. She could never replace the woman in his heart. Ready to face the reality, a son asked Tae-se to go for a walk. She listened calmly as he finally admitted where his heart truly lay, and then, with a heavy but peaceful heart, she let him go. No dia da viagem de Eun Ah, Tae-se fez questão de acompanhá-la pessoalmente ao aeroporto. Durante o trajeto de metrô, sentado no banco à frente dela, ele enviou uma mensagem que tocou seu coração. Ele escreveu que desejava que, no Havaí, ela fosse sempre cercada de amor, valorizada e que tivesse uma vida repleta de paz e felicidade. E acrescentou: se algum dia, no futuro, você estiver pronta para me incluir novamente no mapa da sua vida, saiba que estarei aqui, esperando seu sinal a qualquer momento. Já no saguão do aeroporto, os dois se entregaram a um abraço apertado de despedida. Com o coração na mão, Tae-se abriu o peito e confessou seus sentimentos mais profundos. Aconchegada no peito dele, Eun Ah chorava enquanto sentia aquele calor familiar, nutrindo em silêncio a esperança de que aquela partida não fosse um ponto final, mas sim o início de um capítulo totalmente novo para os dois. Um ano se passou. Tae-se começou a receber fotos de Eun Ah vindas do distante Havaí. Nas imagens, ela parecia radiante e serena, transmitindo a leveza de uma vida tranquila e realizada. Enquanto isso, na terra natal, ele continuava cuidando meticulosamente da antiga casa dela todos os dias. Ele até pendurou com carinho a placa com o nome de Eun Ah no portão, esperando com paciência e silêncio pelo dia em que a mulher que ele tanto ama decidisse voltar.